Welcome to Bible Lesson 85. Today we're going to talk about the next part of Daniel. Where we left off was where King Nebuchadnezzar had been humbled by God by living like a wild animal out in the fields, eating the grass. And when he realized that God was the one that allowed him to have all that he has in his kingdom, he was able to return back to his sanity and rule his kingdom. Well, now we have moved on from Nebuchadnezzar as the king, and now his son, Belshazzar, is going to be the next ruler of Babylon. You would think that from his father, Nebuchadnezzar, he would have learned how to rule with the humbling of knowing that God is in control and that he has no way of taking credit for all that he has basically inherited since he's getting the next step in the kingdom. But unfortunately, Belshazzar has to learn for himself. So we're picking up where Belshazzar is now the king, and he was Nebuchadnezzar's son, but he didn't learn very much in the sense of what Nebuchadnezzar went through with the humbling of God. So we're going to start from there. Belshazzar is the king of Babylon. So, with the king of Babylon, he called all the important people together for a party. And in this party, they were having lots and lots of food and lots of drinks. And Belshazzar went ahead and did something that was highly frowned upon. What he did was he went to the place where Nebuchadnezzar had taken all of the vessels, cups, golden cups that were used in the temple for the holiest of holies, for where God was when the people of Israel went to the priest and were able to commune with God. He took those cups and decided, hey, let's use them in our party right now. So Belshazzar had people go grab all of them and bring them back to the party, where they filled them with wine and all of the drinks that they had at the party, and began to drink them. Not only drink from them, but they began to worship the idol gods that were so commonly worshipped in the Babylonian time during this time. And with that, something amazing or shocking took place as these people were celebrating, having a party with their new king or leader of Babylon, drinking from the vessels, the cups that were from the holy temple where people came to meet up with God. So now they're in the party. Everybody's having a grand old time. Everybody's talking, laughing, singing, whatever they're doing, having a good time at the party. When all of a sudden, King Belshazzar notices something on the wall. His whole face changes, it drops, and he gets quiet. And there on the wall, with a hand that was not connected to a body, a message was written on the wall. That message said, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Now, King Belshazzar was totally blown away. He saw the hand that wasn't attached to anything write this message on the wall, and he did not understand what the message meant. So he called to his magicians, astrologers, his wise men, and said, whoever will read this writing to me and tell me what it means will be clothed in scarlet and will have a gold chain around his neck and be made the third ruler of the kingdom. That should sound familiar. That sounds like King Nebuchadnezzar when he had his dreams and he called all of his people to try and interpret his dream. Only this time with Belshazzar, it's writing on the wall. He wants to know what it means. It is a message for him, but he doesn't understand what it means. So the wise men all looked at the handwriting, and on the wall, and they were frightened and bewildered, just like Belshazzar. They could read the words because they were written in a language that they knew, but they couldn't interpret. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't tell King Belshazzar what they meant. So the only thing they could tell them was that Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin stood for number, number, weight, and division. But what does that mean? King Belshazzar didn't know what it meant. His wise men, his astrologers, his magicians didn't understand what it meant. So they were all baffled looking at this message, knowing the words, but not understanding what it means. So the queen had heard that something had happened at King Belshazzar's party. So the queen, Belshazzar's mother, went over to the party and said, "O king, live forever. Don't be troubled by the writing on the wall. There is a man in this kingdom who will be able to tell you what it means because his spirit is from the holy of gods. Your father found him to be very wise and understanding and made him the chief of the wise men. He can interpret this message just like he interpreted your father's dreams. Let Daniel be called to interpret the writing." The queen had called Daniel by his Hebrew name, which means God is my judge. Maybe the queen mother had also put her trust in Daniel's God. Remember, Daniel's name and his three friends' names were changed when they got to Babylon. Daniel was no longer known as Daniel, he was known as Belteshazzar. But the queen, Belshazzar's mother, called him Daniel when she recommended him to her son. So the king, Belshazzar, summoned Daniel to come to the party and be able to tell him what this message means. So Daniel came. Daniel was much older now. He was now 85 years old. And when he approached the king, Belshazzar said, "Are you Daniel, a captive of Judah? I have heard of you that you are very wise. My own wise men cannot tell me what this message means. But I have heard that you can interpret such things. If you can tell me the meaning of this, I will give you a robe, a golden chain around your neck, and make you third ruler in the kingdom." And Daniel answered, "I'm not interested in any of those gifts, O king, but I will read the writing on the wall to you and interpret it. O king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. He gave him dominion over all the peoples of the world. King Nebuchadnezzar did as he pleased with the people. He killed them or he allowed them to live, whatever he wished. But when his heart exalted in pride, the Most High God took his kingdom from him, and he was driven from the sons of men to live with the wild beasts of the fields for 7 years. And he ate grass like the oxen and was drenched with dew like an animal until he recognized the Most High God, who rules the kingdom of men and appoints whomever he wants over it." Belshazzar was looking at Daniel and said, "Yes, yes, I know all about what happened to the great King Nebuchadnezzar who reigned before me, but what do I care about that? How does that pertain to me?" And Daniel went on boldly, "And you, his son, O Belshazzar, although you knew all this, have not humbled your heart before God, but have insulted the Most High God by drinking wine out of his holy vessels. You have used God's holy cups to drink to your idols of silver, gold, wood, and stone, gods that can neither see, hear, nor understand. And the God who holds your heart in his hands and your destiny, you have not glorified." Well, Belshazzar was motionless. His face was white with fear. Remember, everybody is still here. The party was happening, so everybody's just sitting there quiet. Now Belshazzar is being told about himself. Nobody dared to move in the party. Yes, Belshazzar knew all that had happened to King Nebuchadnezzar, and being his son, he also knew of his father's personal faith in God of heaven and on earth, for who the whole world had heard Nebuchadnezzar's testimony, and especially his family knew of it in a greater way than the rest of the world. So this makes Belshazzar even more responsible and accountable for God before God. Belshazzar was certainly not ignorant of the true God. He just chose to act as if there was no God at all. Nobody in the great banquet hall moved until even as Daniel continued. This is what the message means. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to your reign. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and failed the test. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Perez is the root word of Upharsin. So God's message to Belshazzar was that his rule was finished and the great kingdom of Babylon was fallen. Even as Daniel was saying these words to Belshazzar, the armies of the Medes and the Persians were outside of the huge thick walls of the great city of Babylon. The city was protected by the walls so thick that 6 chariots could drive on top of the walls. And the walls were surrounded by deep canals of water. Belshazzar had been sure that no army could ever overcome these obstacles and enter the gates and the stronghold of Babylon. But the army of the Medes and the Persians had devised a clever way to enter the fortified city. They dug a large canal to divert the water from the riverbed and change the course of the river. Thus the Medes and the Persians were entering the city of Babylon at that very moment through the dry riverbed where the Euphrates River had flowed. In a short while they would be inside the city and would control the kingdom of Babylon. Belshazzar would shortly not only be dethroned, but he would also be dead. So, with this, during this time, Babylon was the ruler of the world. And so Belshazzar thought, there's no way that anybody is going to be able to take over Babylon. Okay? But at the same time that Daniel was telling him about what this message meant, the Medes and the Persians were coming in to take over Babylon. God numbers our days and keeps track of everything that happens to us so that all the things that we do. He weighs our thoughts, our words, and our actions to see if they are good and right. God also divides our deeds as to good or evil. So with Belshazzar, his days were numbered. He did not pass the test of doing what is right, and his kingdom was going to be divided. He was going to lose it all. So the handwriting on the wall is for all of us. It tells us that we need to pay attention to what God says, to ask him to save us while there is opportunity. It tells us that God controls our destiny, even as he controlled Nebuchadnezzar's and Belshazzar's destinies. Don't wait to come to him to be saved. Come to him today.